Clara had always been a woman of quiet strength. From the moment she inherited the small ranch on the outskirts of the town, she had learned that life could be hard, unpredictable, and lonely, but also rewarding if one had patience and courage. The ranch was her sanctuary, a place where she could find peace in the rhythm of the land, the soft lowing of cattle at dusk, the whisper of wind through the dry grass, and the golden light of the sun spreading across the hills every morning. Living alone had never been an easy choice, but Clara embraced it. Her husband traveled often for work in a neighboring city, leaving her to manage the ranch by herself. Some nights the loneliness pressed down on her, especially when she returned to an empty house after a long day of chores. But other nights she felt a rare kind of freedom. She could walk through the barn without interruption, decide the schedule for feeding the animals, or sit on the porch just watching the horizon turn from orange to deep purple. The ranch had taught her independence in a way no one else could, yet even in her solitary life, family had its way of finding her. Clara had always maintained a complicated relationship with her in-laws. Their visits were rare, but they were never simple. They had a way of intruding into her carefully structured life with sharp words, subtle judgments, and constant reminders of how things should be done. Clara had tried to ignore them, keeping her distance, but she always sensed a tension under the surface whenever they were near. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Clara noticed the dust clouds rising from the long dirt road leading to her ranch. At first, she assumed it was one of the neighbors coming to check on the cattle. But then, she saw two familiar figures stepping down from a truck that looked far too polished for the rugged terrain of her land. Her stomach tightened as she realized it was her in-laws. She hadn't seen them for nearly 6 months. They had called a week ago, casually mentioning that they might stop by to see how things were going. Clara had assumed it was a passing visit, a brief hello and then gone. But she should have known better. Clara walked slowly toward the porch, brushing the hay off her jeans. Her heart raced, not just from the physical exertion, but from the uncertainty of what their visit might bring. The ranch felt suddenly smaller, the wide-open fields seeming to close in around her. She could hear the truck rumbling to a stop, and the clatter of boots on the gravel made her pause. "Clara!" her mother-in-law called out, her voice cheerful but with a sharp edge that Clara had learned to recognize. "It's been too long." Clara took a deep breath, forcing a smile. "Yes, it has. Come on in." They stepped onto the porch, the sun catching on their faces in a way that made their smiles look almost too bright. Her father-in-law, tall and imposing, nodded at her. Clara could feel the weight of his gaze, the kind that seemed to measure her every move. She knew they didn't come simply to visit. They had an agenda, though she couldn't yet tell what it was. Inside the ranch house, Clara offered them lemonade, hoping to ease the tension she already felt building. She had prepared the living room to look welcoming, arranging fresh flowers from the garden and clearing the small table by the window. The house smelled faintly of bread she had baked that morning, warm and comforting, a contrast to the nervous energy in the room. As they sat, Clara tried to make light conversation, asking about the town, the weather, and the latest family news. But the answers were clipped, short and formal. She could feel the subtle judgments in the pauses and in the way her mother-in-law adjusted her scarf, with an almost deliberate elegance. Clara knew better than to argue, so she kept her voice calm, her eyes steady though her mind raced. After a while, her father-in-law stood and wandered toward the back porch. "The ranch looks smaller than I expected," he said casually, though Clara could tell from the tone that he meant it as a criticism. Clara's jaw tightened. "It's just the way the land is," she replied, trying to sound lighthearted. "It's always been this size." They wandered around the ranch, examining fences, barns, and cattle. Clara followed, answering questions and listening to comments that were thinly veiled as advice. Every word they spoke seemed designed to unsettle her, to remind her that she was never doing enough, that her independence was fragile. She tried to keep her composure, reminding herself that the ranch, her animals, and her life were her own. By late afternoon, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the fields. Clara felt drained but determined. She returned to the house to prepare dinner, telling herself that a warm meal might soften the tension. She chopped vegetables and stirred pots, listening to the creak of the floorboards as her in-laws moved about the kitchen. She could sense them watching her, and it made her more aware of every movement, every word she said. Despite the pressure, Clara refused to show any sign of weakness. She was proud of the life she had built, proud of the independence she had earned, and she would not allow anyone to make her feel small. Still, she felt a pang of loneliness. In that moment, she longed for the comforting presence of her husband, for someone who truly understood the challenges and triumphs of life on the ranch. As the evening approached, the sky turned shades of pink and orange, reflecting off the distant hills. Clara stepped onto the porch, taking a moment to breathe in the familiar scents of the land. Fresh hay, dry grass, and the faint aroma of the animals she had tended all day. The beauty of the landscape reminded her why she had chosen this life, why she had stayed despite the hardships. She felt a flicker of hope, a quiet determination to protect her world and herself. Clara knew that this visit would not be easy. She sensed that their presence carried expectations she could not meet, judgments she could not ignore, but she also knew that she had the strength to face whatever came next. She was used to challenges, to the unpredictable turns of life on a ranch, and while the coming night might test her patience, her courage, and her resolve, she would not allow it to shake her sense of self. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, Clara prepared for the night ahead. The ranch was quiet now, except for the soft rustle of the wind and the distant calls of animals settling in for the evening. Clara stood on the porch watching the twilight and reminded herself that she was not alone. Not really. She had the land, the animals, and most importantly, her own inner strength. Whatever the night would bring, she would meet it with calm, focus, and determination. The in-laws had arrived unexpectedly, bringing tension and uncertainty. But Clara's spirit remained unbroken. She was a woman who had learned to survive, to thrive, and to face life's challenges with steady resolve. The ranch was her home, her sanctuary, and she would protect it, not with anger but with the quiet, unwavering power of someone who knew who she was and what she was capable of. And so, as the evening deepened and shadows stretched across the land, Clara prepared herself for the moments ahead, unaware of how that night would test her resilience in ways she had never imagined, but confident that no matter what, she would stand strong. The night settled over the ranch quietly, but Clara could feel the weight of her in-laws' presence in the house. Their voices, polite yet sharp, echoed softly through the wooden floors as they moved from room to room, commenting on little things, the placement of furniture, the neatness of the kitchen, the arrangement of the dining table. Each remark, though couched in politeness, felt like a judgment, a silent reminder that Clara's independence was always under scrutiny. She tried to maintain her calm, pouring water into glasses and arranging the plates on the table for dinner. The smell of the roasted vegetables and bread she had prepared filled the room, offering a sense of comfort and familiarity amidst the tension. Clara reminded herself that she had spent years building this life, shaping it according to her values and hard work. She would not allow anyone to make her feel inferior in her own home. Dinner began quietly. Her in-laws exchanged polite small talk, asking about the weather, the ranch, and distant relatives. Clara responded carefully, keeping her tone neutral, but she could feel the subtle pressure of their gaze, the way they analyzed her expressions and actions. Every movement, from passing the salad to pouring the lemonade, felt scrutinized. She caught herself taking a deep breath, trying not to let frustration or irritation show. Her father-in-law spoke first, commenting on the ranch's layout. "I see you've made some changes here," he said, his eyes scanning the room as if judging the space for hidden flaws. "Interesting choice to expand the vegetable garden this way." Clara nodded, choosing her words carefully. "Yes, it's helped with efficiency and the crops have been thriving. I wanted to make sure everything is sustainable for the long term." She forced a smile, aware that her explanation might not satisfy him. Her mother-in-law, seated across the table, tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing in a subtle, disapproving way. "I suppose it's practical," she said, her tone neutral but with an edge that made Clara's skin tighten. "Though I never would have thought to arrange things like this." Clara kept her voice steady. "It's just what works best for me and the ranch. Every place has its own needs." She felt a flicker of defiance but restrained it, knowing that confrontation could escalate the tension unnecessarily. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, neighbors, local events, and Clara's husband's work. But Clara could sense the undercurrent of judgment throughout the discussion. She knew her in-laws had always struggled with her independence, preferring to view her life as something that required correction or supervision. She reminded herself that she was capable, that she had managed the ranch successfully for years, and that she did not need anyone's approval to validate her life choices. After dinner, Clara cleared the table and retreated to the living room, where her in-laws followed. They sat quietly on the sofa, observing her movements as she tidied up. Clara felt the familiar mix of irritation and determination rise within her. She refused to let their presence make her feel small. She had faced countless challenges on the ranch, harsh weather, stubborn animals, and long, exhausting days alone. Surely she could handle the scrutiny of her in-laws. Her mother-in-law broke the silence. "You've done well keeping everything in order," she said, her tone softer than before. Clara sensed the compliment was layered with a subtle critique, a reminder that her efforts were always being measured. Clara nodded, accepting the words at face value. "Thank you," she replied. "I try my best. Running a ranch requires attention to every detail." Her father-in-law, who had been quiet until now, leaned back in his chair, his gaze sweeping over the room. "It's impressive that you manage all this on your own," he said, his tone neutral. "Most people would struggle with such responsibilities." Clara allowed herself a small smile. "It can be challenging, but it's also rewarding," she said. "I've learned to adapt and handle whatever comes my way." As the evening wore on, the conversation began to drift toward family history and past events. Her in-laws reminisced about their early years, sharing stories that sometimes made Clara feel nostalgic, but often reminded her of their critical expectations. She listened politely, offering occasional comments, all the while maintaining a mental boundary. She knew that to keep her peace, she had to engage without losing herself in their narratives. At one point, her mother-in-law stood and walked toward the window, looking out over the fields. "The land looks peaceful," she said softly, almost admiringly. "But it must be lonely at times." Clara felt a pang of emotion but held her composure. "It can be quiet, yes," she admitted, "but it's also a place where I can focus, work, and find balance. The solitude is part of what makes it meaningful." Her father-in-law nodded, but Clara could see the hint of doubt in his eyes. He didn't fully understand her choice to live independently, and she knew it would take more than words to bridge that gap. Still, she didn't feel the need to defend herself further. Her life, her choices, and her daily struggles were her own, and she had learned that validation was something she had to find within, not from others. Later, as they moved to the living room, Clara offered them tea and settled into an armchair across from them. She noticed the way they exchanged subtle glances, perhaps trying to communicate unspoken judgments or concerns. Clara took a deep breath, centering herself. She was aware of their opinions, but she refused to let them control her emotions. She had faced storms on the ranch, both literal and metaphorical, and she knew she could weather this too. They discussed plans for the upcoming week, local events, and distant relatives. Clara participated in the conversation, contributing information where appropriate, but she carefully maintained her sense of autonomy. Each word she spoke, each gesture she made was deliberate. She knew that staying calm and composed was her best strategy. She had learned long ago that reacting impulsively often gave others power over her. As the night deepened, the air in the house grew still. The sounds of the ranch outside, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant lowing of cattle, created a sense of continuity and grounding for Clara. She drew strength from these familiar sounds, reminding herself that this land, this home, and her own inner resilience were constants she could rely on. Her in-laws eventually began to prepare for bed, and Clara helped them settle into the guest room. She ensured they were comfortable, offering blankets and extra pillows, all while maintaining her polite distance. Once they were settled, she returned to the living room, her mind spinning with thoughts. Their visit had been tense, filled with subtle critiques and unspoken judgments, but she had managed to navigate it with composure and confidence. Clara sat by the window, looking out over the ranch under the moonlight. The fields stretched endlessly, bathed in silver light, and she felt a renewed sense of determination. Life on the ranch had always demanded resilience, patience, and focus. Tonight was no different. The in-laws' presence had tested her, but she had emerged unshaken, standing firm in her choices and her identity. She allowed herself a small moment of quiet reflection. The challenges she faced, both in her life and in her relationships, were opportunities to reaffirm her strength. She had learned to survive, to adapt, and to maintain her peace amidst tension. This night, like so many others before it, would become part of the story of her independence and her unwavering commitment to herself and her life. As she prepared to turn in for the night, Clara felt a sense of quiet pride. She had faced an evening filled with subtle scrutiny and potential conflict, and had navigated it successfully. The ranch, her sanctuary, was safe, and so was her sense of self. She knew the coming days might bring more challenges, but she was ready. She had faced storms before, and she would face them again with courage, clarity, and quiet determination. And so, as the moon climbed higher in the sky and the stars twinkled above the vast landscape, Clara closed her eyes, embracing the calm and strength that came from knowing she was capable of handling whatever came her way. The ranch, the land, and her own resilience formed a triangle of security she could always rely on. A reminder that no matter the obstacles, she would endure, she would thrive, and she would remain unbroken. The morning sunlight poured through the windows of the ranch, casting warm golden beams across the wooden floors. Clara awoke early, as she always did, the rhythm of ranch life guiding her before the world had even fully stirred. She moved quietly, careful not to wake her in-laws, and slipped into her worn boots, ready to start the day with her usual chores. Despite the tension from the previous evening, she felt a quiet determination building inside her. Outside, the ranch was alive with motion. The cattle lowed softly as they wandered across the pastures, and the horses shifted in their stalls, eager for the morning feeding. Clara breathed in the fresh, crisp air, filling her lungs with the scent of grass, hay, and soil. This was her world, and she knew it intimately. Every fence, every barn, every patch of land held her memories, her efforts, and her care. Here she was capable, strong, and in control. She started with the animals, feeding the horses first. Their soft nuzzles and trusting eyes always brought a calm focus to her mind. She moved from stall to stall, brushing coats and checking hooves, speaking to each animal gently. The repetitive tasks gave her time to reflect. She thought about her in-laws, their sharp remarks, and their quiet judgments. They had come with expectations, but Clara realized that she didn't need to meet them. Her life, her work, and her choices were hers, and she was proud of every bit of effort she had put into this ranch. After the chores, she returned to the house, wiping her hands on a clean towel. The smell of fresh bread from the previous day still lingered in the kitchen. Clara prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and hot coffee, setting the table with care, though her heart was slightly heavy with anticipation. She knew her in-laws would join her soon, and she had to navigate the morning with the same composure she had shown the night before. They came down the stairs slowly, still in their formal attire, as though the night had not loosened their need for control. Clara greeted them with a warm but steady smile. "Good morning. I've made breakfast," she said. Her voice was calm, polite, and firm. Her mother-in-law examined the table with a critical eye. "You've prepared quite a meal," she said, her tone neutral. "I suppose it will do." Clara forced herself to ignore the subtle sting of criticism. She poured coffee for them and served the eggs with care. "I hope you enjoy it," she said simply. She didn't argue, didn't explain herself. She simply acted, letting her confidence and composure speak for her. During breakfast, the conversation was polite but tense. They asked questions about the ranch, the work she had done, and her husband's schedule. Clara answered carefully, avoiding long explanations, focusing instead on the facts and the successes she had achieved. She knew that trying to justify herself would only give them power over her emotions, and she refused to let that happen. After breakfast, her father-in-law suggested they take a walk around the ranch. Clara agreed, knowing that keeping them moving might ease the tension. She led them through the fields, pointing out the progress she had made with the crops and the improvements she had made to the fences. Each step, each word was a quiet assertion of her competence. As they walked, Clara noticed that her in-laws were unusually quiet. Their glances, once sharp and judgmental, now seemed more curious, almost hesitant. Clara realized that they were beginning to see her differently, not entirely approving perhaps, but certainly unable to dismiss her as easily as before. This small recognition fueled a growing sense of confidence within her. At one point, her mother-in-law stopped near the barn, watching Clara as she tended to the equipment. "You've managed all of this on your own," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much work it would be." Clara paused, wiping her hands on a rag, and met her gaze calmly. It's been challenging, she admitted, but I enjoy it. The ranch has taught me a lot about patience and responsibility. Her father-in-law nodded slowly. It's clear you've put a lot of effort into this place, he said. I suppose we underestimated just how capable you are. Clara felt a small surge of satisfaction, but she remained composed. She didn't need praise. She needed only to be acknowledged as the person she had worked so hard to become. This moment was not about approval. It was about asserting her presence, her independence, and her ability to handle challenges with grace. The walk continued in silence for a while, punctuated only by the sounds of the ranch. Clara could feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Her in-laws were still present, still watching, but the tension had lessened. She realized that they were beginning to recognize her as an individual, capable of making her own choices and managing her own life. When they returned to the house, Clara suggested they rest in the living room while she prepared lunch. She moved with purpose, setting out fresh ingredients and utensils, her mind focused on the tasks at hand. Cooking, like managing the ranch, was a skill she had honed over years, and it gave her a sense of control and achievement. As she worked, her in-laws observed quietly. This time their remarks were minimal, and when they spoke, it was with curiosity rather than criticism. Clara felt a sense of relief, knowing that her quiet strength had begun to influence the way they saw her. She didn't need to fight or argue. Her consistency, her competence, and her calm demeanor were making their impression. Lunch was served, and the conversation flowed more naturally than before. They discussed the weather, shared memories of past family gatherings, and even laughed softly at a few light-hearted anecdotes. Clara could feel the tension of the previous night lifting, replaced by a tentative mutual respect. She realized that the turning point was not a dramatic confrontation, but a steady demonstration of her strength and independence. After lunch, Clara suggested they take a short break. She retreated to the porch with a cup of tea, watching the animals graze in the fields. The sun was high, casting warm light over the ranch, and Clara felt a sense of calm satisfaction. She had faced the scrutiny and subtle judgments of her in-laws and emerged stronger, more confident, and fully aware of her own capabilities. Her mother-in-law joined her on the porch, sitting quietly beside her. For a moment, they simply watched the fields together, the silence comfortable rather than tense. I didn't realize how much responsibility you've taken on, her mother-in-law said softly. It's impressive. Clara smiled gently, grateful for the acknowledgement but careful to remain composed. Thank you, she replied. It's been a lot of work, but I've learned a lot along the way. This ranch is important to me, and I take pride in caring for it. Her mother-in-law nodded, and for the first time Clara felt a connection that wasn't clouded by judgment or expectation. It was a small moment, but it mattered. She understood that respect was earned not through confrontation, but through consistent demonstration of competence, integrity, and calm authority. As the afternoon wore on, Clara continued her work around the ranch while her in-laws explored the property. She maintained a quiet vigilance, aware of their presence but not letting it dominate her attention. Each task she completed, each step she took, reinforced her sense of self and her control over her environment. By evening, the atmosphere in the house had shifted noticeably. The subtle tension of the previous night had given way to a mutual understanding, however tentative. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced the challenge with patience, skill, and unwavering composure. The turning point had come not from confrontation but from steadfast resilience, from quietly showing who she was and what she was capable of. As she prepared dinner, Clara reflected on the day. She had navigated scrutiny, maintained her composure, and asserted her independence without a single harsh word. The in-laws, though still outsiders in her world, had begun to recognize her strength, and Clara understood more than ever that her true power lay not in others' approval, but in her own unwavering confidence and commitment to her life, her work, and herself. Night fell over the ranch, and the stars began to emerge in the clear sky above. Clara stepped onto the porch one last time, taking a deep breath of the cool evening air. She looked out over the fields, feeling the quiet satisfaction that comes from having faced a challenge and risen above it with dignity and strength. Her in-laws had come with judgments and expectations, but Clara had shown them that she was capable, independent, and unshakable. And in that moment she felt a renewed sense of peace, a quiet pride in herself and her choices, and the knowledge that no matter what came next, she had the strength to face it with grace. The morning sun rose over the ranch in soft golden hues, spilling light across the rolling fields. Clara was awake early as she always was, moving quietly through the house so as not to disturb her in-laws. The previous days had been tense, but she felt a growing sense of confidence and clarity. She knew that today would require her to be alert, focused, and assertive. The ranch was her sanctuary, and she would protect it and her peace at all costs. She moved to the barn first, checking on the horses and making sure the cattle were safe and fed. Her in-laws had followed her outside, lingering near the porch watching her work with quiet curiosity. Clara noticed their expressions, one of tentative respect mixed with lingering doubt, but she didn't let it distract her. Each movement she made, from feeding the animals to repairing a fence post, reinforced her capability and independence. As she finished with the chores, Clara gathered her in-laws near the porch. "I think it's time we talk," she said calmly, her voice steady but firm. "There are some things we need to address before the day continues." She could feel her in-laws stiffen, their polite facades showing hints of apprehension. Her mother-in-law spoke first, her tone light but cautious. "About what exactly?" Clara took a deep breath, keeping her expression calm. "About respect and boundaries," she replied. "I understand that you have opinions about how things should be done here, but this is my home, my ranch, and my life. I am fully capable of managing it on my own. I need you to acknowledge that and respect it." Her father-in-law frowned slightly but remained silent, waiting to hear what she would say next. Clara continued, feeling a growing sense of determination. "I want this visit to be productive and peaceful. That can only happen if we are honest and respectful with each other. I won't allow judgment or control to disrupt my life or my work." There was a pause. Clara could sense that her words had landed, forcing her in-laws to reconsider their approach. They exchanged a glance, and she realized that they had not expected her to speak with such clarity and authority. In that moment, she understood that true confrontation did not require anger or harsh words. It required confidence, composure, and a clear assertion of one's own boundaries. Her mother-in-law finally nodded slowly. "I see," she said softly. "Perhaps we have been too critical. We did not mean to disrespect you, but we wanted to ensure everything was running smoothly." Clara held her gaze steadily. "I understand that, but I am capable. I have been managing this ranch successfully for years. The best way to ensure things run smoothly is to trust me and allow me to handle my responsibilities." Her father-in-law spoke next, his voice measured. "You are right, Clara. We did not fully recognize your ability. It was never our intention to undermine you. We see now that you have earned our respect through your actions." Clara felt a quiet satisfaction. She had achieved what she needed. Not only acknowledgement of her abilities, but also a shift in the dynamic between her and her in-laws. There was no need for confrontation fueled by anger. Her strength and composure had spoken louder than any words of argument could have. After the discussion, Clara suggested they take a walk around the ranch together, giving them a chance to see the work she had done and understand the scope of her responsibilities. As they moved through the fields, the barns, and the pastures, she spoke about the improvements she had made, the challenges she had overcome, and the daily routines she maintained. She explained her reasoning for decisions, her methods for efficiency, and her approach to caring for the animals. Her in-laws listened quietly, asking questions occasionally, but their tone had changed. Where there had once been criticism, now there was curiosity and, gradually, respect. Clara could feel the atmosphere shift as they began to recognize the effort, skill, and dedication that went into every aspect of the ranch. At one point, they stopped near the edge of the property, overlooking the wide open fields. Clara spoke about her vision for the ranch, the goals she had for improving sustainability, and the plans she had for the animals' welfare. She spoke with calm confidence, her voice steady and clear, conveying both knowledge and passion. Her mother-in-law looked at her with a new understanding. "I didn't realize how much thought and care went into everything," she admitted. "It's impressive." Clara nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without prideful arrogance. "It's work I love," she said, "and it's work that requires attention to detail and consistency. Every choice I make here affects the ranch, the animals, and ultimately, my life." Her father-in-law joined in, his tone reflective. "You've handled this with remarkable composure and skill. I can see now that we underestimated what it takes to manage a ranch like this." Clara allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had not needed to argue or insist. Her competence, patience, and calm authority had demonstrated her capabilities far more effectively than any confrontation could have. The rest of the day passed in a steady rhythm. Clara continued her chores, occasionally explaining tasks to her in-laws, showing them how she managed the work efficiently. She let them see the routine, the careful planning, and the physical labor required to maintain the ranch. Her in-laws began to offer small acknowledgments, subtle gestures of approval, and even questions that reflected genuine interest rather than criticism. By late afternoon, Clara decided it was time to show them the nearby creek that ran along the edge of the property. The walk was peaceful, filled with the gentle sounds of water flowing over rocks and the calls of distant birds. Clara spoke about the history of the land, the importance of water management, and the ecosystem she worked to preserve. Her in-laws listened attentively, clearly absorbing the depth of knowledge and care Clara applied to every aspect of her life. There was no tension now, only quiet respect and understanding. Clara realized that the turning point of the day had come from her consistent demonstration of responsibility, knowledge, and calm authority. As the sun began to set, casting warm golden light across the ranch, Clara gathered her in-laws near the porch once more. "I hope today has given you a clearer understanding of my life here," she said. "The ranch is more than just a job. It's my home, my passion, and my responsibility. I ask that you respect the work I do and the choices I make." Her mother-in-law nodded, her expression softened. "We understand now," she said. "We see your dedication and the care you put into everything. We respect your work and your independence." Her father-in-law added, "You've shown us your strength and ability. We acknowledge it fully." Clara felt a deep sense of relief and pride. She had navigated a potentially challenging confrontation without resorting to anger or conflict. Her in-laws had come with expectations, assumptions, and judgments, but through her calm authority, patience, and consistent demonstration of skill and knowledge, she had shifted the dynamic entirely. As the evening settled over the ranch, Clara reflected on the day. She had faced a challenge not just in managing the land, but in asserting herself and her boundaries in the presence of family. She had proven, first to herself and then to them, that she was capable, competent, and deserving of respect. Later, as the stars began to appear in the sky, Clara stepped onto the porch alone, looking out over the fields and pastures she had tended so carefully. The ranch was quiet, peaceful, and safe. She allowed herself a moment of reflection, acknowledging the strength it had taken to navigate the day's challenges and the satisfaction of having emerged with her dignity, authority, and independence intact. Clara understood now that true confrontation did not always require loud words or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it was about maintaining composure, showing consistency, and allowing one's actions and abilities to speak for themselves. Through her calm presence and careful leadership, she had turned a difficult situation into a moment of understanding, respect, and mutual acknowledgement. As the night deepened and the ranch settled into silence, Clara felt a renewed sense of confidence. She had faced scrutiny, subtle judgments, and the challenge of asserting her independence, and she had done so with grace and determination. The ranch, the animals, and her own resilience were constants she could rely on, a foundation of strength that no external force could shake. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, both expected and unforeseen. But Clara also knew that she had the inner strength, clarity, and composure to handle whatever came next. She had faced a pivotal moment and emerged stronger, more confident, and fully aware of her own power. With a final glance at the fields bathed in moonlight, Clara turned back into the house, ready to end the day with quiet reflection and satisfaction. She had confronted expectations, asserted boundaries, and demonstrated her strength, all without raising her voice or compromising her integrity. And in that moment, she understood the true meaning of resilience, the ability to face challenges calmly, confidently, and with unwavering self-respect. The first light of morning crept gently across the ranch, painting the fields in soft shades of gold and green. Clara rose with a quiet sense of calm, knowing that the events of the past days had reached a turning point. The tension that had once filled the house had faded, replaced by a sense of understanding and cautious respect. She felt proud, not just for the way she had handled her in-laws, but for the strength and patience she had discovered in herself. After a quick breakfast, Clara walked to the barn, letting the cool morning air fill her lungs. The animals greeted her with their familiar sounds, the soft nicker of horses, the lowing of cattle, and the occasional chirp of a bird in the rafters. Each sound was a reminder of the life she had built, the work she had done, and the home she had created. She felt grounded in the routine, the rhythm of the ranch offering a sense of peace that few other things could provide. Her in-laws had moved quietly around the house, still observing but no longer critical. Clara could sense a subtle change in their behavior. The sharp edges of their judgments had softened into curiosity, and at times even admiration. She realized that the respect she had worked to earn was slowly taking root. They had come with expectations and assumptions, but through her consistent composure and quiet authority, she had shown them who she truly was. Clara decided it was time to share some of the deeper aspects of the ranch with her in-laws. She invited them to walk with her to the far fields where the wildflowers grew thick and the creek ran clear. "I want to show you the part of the ranch that I love most," she said, her voice calm but filled with warmth. "This is where I feel closest to the land and to the life I've built here." As they walked, Clara spoke about the history of the land, the traditions of the ranch, and the care she had taken to maintain the balance between the animals, crops, and natural environment. She explained how every decision, from planting schedules to water management, was made thoughtfully, considering both the present and the future. Her in-laws listened attentively, occasionally asking questions, but mostly letting her words paint the picture of her dedication and passion. At the edge of the creek, Clara paused and looked out over the sparkling water. "This creek is more than just water," she said softly. "It's life for the ranch. It nourishes the fields, the animals, and everything that depends on this land. It's a reminder that care and attention can create balance and growth." Her mother-in-law stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. "I see now," she said quietly. "It's clear how much effort and love you put into this place. We underestimated the work and the thought that goes into every decision." Clara nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without seeking praise. "Thank you," she replied. "It's work I care about deeply, and it's important to me that it's done well. But more than that, it's my life. I take pride in managing it responsibly and thoughtfully." Her father-in-law, standing nearby, added, "We can see now that the ranch is not just land. It's your life's work. The way you care for it is impressive." For the first time in days, Clara felt a sense of deep relief. She had navigated the challenges of this visit, asserting her independence and competence, and now she was seeing the results. Her in-laws' recognition wasn't simply about approval. It was about understanding, respect, and a willingness to see her as she truly was. The group spent the morning exploring more of the ranch, observing the animals and walking through the fields. Clara explained her plans for future improvements, the ideas she had for sustainability, and the ways she hoped to make the ranch an even stronger, more resilient home for both the animals and herself. Her in-laws asked questions, not out of criticism, but out of genuine interest. Clara could feel the subtle shift in their attitude, and it filled her with a quiet satisfaction. By midday, Clara led them back to the house for lunch. The table was set simply with fresh bread, salad, and fruit from the garden. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily, free of the tension and subtle judgments that had marked the beginning of their visit. Laughter came naturally, and stories were shared without the edge of criticism. Clara realized that this was the moment of true healing, not dramatic declarations or confrontations, but the steady, quiet restoration of respect and understanding. After lunch, Clara suggested they take a rest while she attended to the animals. She felt confident enough now to let her in-laws have some time to themselves, knowing that the atmosphere in the house was peaceful. She walked through the barns, checking the horses' water troughs, inspecting the fences, and feeding the animals. Each task reminded her of the life she had built, the strength she had cultivated, and the independence she had fought to protect. Returning to the house in the afternoon, Clara found her in-laws sitting quietly in the living room. Her mother-in-law looked up and smiled. "Clara, I want to thank you," she said softly. not just for showing us the ranch, but for showing us who you are. We see your strength and your dedication, and we respect it deeply." Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you," she replied. "That means a lot. I hope this visit has helped you understand my life here and the care I take with everything." Her father-in-law nodded. "It has. We came with assumptions and we leave with understanding. You've handled everything with grace, clarity, and strength." Clara realized that healing wasn't just about others acknowledging her. It was also about her recognizing her own power and resilience. She had faced tension, subtle criticism, and the challenge of asserting herself in a situation that could have been difficult. And through patience, calm authority, and consistent competence, she had turned a tense visit into a moment of mutual respect. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the fields, Clara led her in-laws outside once more. The evening light made the landscape glow, highlighting the careful work she had done over the years. "This is my home," she said, her voice steady. "It's where I've learned patience, responsibility, and resilience. I hope you can see why it matters so much to me." Her mother-in-law looked around, her eyes softening. "We see it, Clara, we understand now, and we're proud of what you've accomplished." Her father-in-law placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "You've shown us that independence, strength, and care can coexist. The ranch is a reflection of who you are, and we respect that deeply." Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of closure. She had faced her challenges with courage, maintained her dignity, and fostered understanding where tension once existed. The experience had reinforced her confidence in herself, her abilities, and her choices. It had also reminded her that patience, consistency, and calm authority often speak louder than words or conflict. As night fell and the stars appeared overhead, Clara stood on the porch watching the ranch bathed in moonlight. The animals were settled for the night, the fields quiet, and the house filled with a sense of calm. She reflected on the days that had passed, the tension, the confrontation, and now the quiet healing. She felt a profound appreciation for her own strength and resilience, and for the opportunity to turn a challenging situation into a moment of connection and respect. Her in-laws had come with assumptions, judgments, and expectations, but Clara had guided the visit with patience and confidence. Through her actions and demeanor, she had created understanding and respect, not through force or argument, but through the quiet, steady demonstration of her abilities and character. As she prepared for bed, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The ranch was safe, the animals were cared for, and her relationships had reached a new level of mutual respect. She had faced tension and uncertainty and emerged stronger, more confident and fully aware of her own power. Before closing her eyes, Clara stepped onto the porch one last time, taking in the vast landscape under the clear night sky. The stars sparkled like tiny beacons, reminding her that, no matter the challenges she faced, there was always light, clarity, and resilience to guide her. She felt grateful for her life, her home, and her strength, and she knew that the lessons of these past days would stay with her forever. Clara returned to the warmth of her home, her heart calm and her mind clear. She had faced judgment and scrutiny, asserted her independence, and nurtured understanding, all without compromising her integrity. The ranch, her sanctuary, was a reflection of her resilience and care, and she knew that she could continue to thrive no matter what challenges came her way. As she drifted to sleep, Clara felt a deep sense of closure. The visit had tested her patience, her strength, and her confidence, and she had met it with grace. She had turned tension into respect, conflict into understanding, and uncertainty into reassurance.
And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the peace of the ranch, she knew that she was exactly where she belonged, strong, independent, and fully in command of her life and her home.